Hey.
Ooh.
So today's episode of Getting Real, we're going to be talking about Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed, and one particular excerpt from it. Yep. That she actually talks about on her Instagram. I'll be posting a link to that if you wanted to listen to that in its entirety to get the context of what we'll be talking about. But it basically, we're going to be talking about the concept of in the gay community of being born this way, that I'm gay and I was born this way, this is who I am. That's what we're going to be talking about. But first, I have to address one thing, because I'm here with Sarah Chase, who back in, oh my God, I don't even know when it was, the first time you did a podcast with me and at the time Julie for the Catching Up. I think that's what it's called, right? It was Catching Up. Anyways, you were introduced as a friend, and at that point we didn't really know what was going on. Well, all right, it's a conversation for another time. But you're actually presently, I can say with certainty, you're my partner, and we're in a relationship, so that's full disclosure in this conversation. And also, we actually did not talk about this beforehand. You had your notes, I had my notes. This is the first time we're actually going to be talking about this, so we're doing it as you would say, raw and real.
Raw and real, and we're doing it live.
Yeah.
And I've read the book in its entirety, and you have not.
I haven't yet. You're going to be giving me the book, so.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So, anyways, let's get into it. So you're going to read the excerpt that she actually talks about, because she posted a piece of it on her Instagram, and I guess she got a lot of feedback from people, positive and negative, and she did take it to heart and listened and gave her feedback on it. But she starts off her IG live, TV live thing. It wasn't live, but it was TV, discussing reading from it. So I feel like it's best if we read from it, and then when we discuss portions of her IGTV, I actually wrote down the quotes though, so we'll have the quotes so everything can kind of stay in context as we talk about it.
Absolutely.
So it's all you now.
All me now. This is right in front of me. Okay, so the chapter is called Permission Slips. This is an essay she wrote for the book. A fundamentalist Christian organization recently announced that I was excommunicated from the evangelical church. I learned of this with great amusement. I felt like Kramer from Seinfeld when his boss tries to fire him from a job he never really had. "You can't fire me," Kramer says, baffled and defiant. "I don't even really work here." I was talking to a friend about this, and she said, "It's so awful. Why can't they understand that you were born this way? You can't help it. How cruel to punish you for something you can't even change." I thought, that's not exactly it. Sometimes we say things that we believe are loving, but actually reveal our conditioning. Things you can't help are things you would help if you could. If I could change my sexuality, I sure as hell wouldn't. Sweet Jesus, I love sharing my life with a woman. I love how relentlessly we yearn to understand each other and how neither of us quits until we do. I love how we already do understand each other so well, because we are two women trying to free ourselves from the same cages. I love how our life together is one eternal conversation that we put on pause only to sleep. I love having sex with my wife. I love the touches that are suggestions, and I love the moment we lock eyes and decide. I love how well we understand each other's bodies, and I love the liquid velvet of her skin. I love the softness, intensity, patience, and generosity of the during, and I love the after, the time outside of time, when we lie in each other's arms in silence and smile at the ceiling in relief and gratitude. I love how one of us inevitably giggles and says, "Is this really our life?" I have been in a mixed gender marriage and in a same gender marriage. The same gender marriage feels so much more natural to me because there is no constant effort to bridge the gap between two genders that have been trained by our culture to love and to live so differently. My wife and I are on the same side of the bridge already. Being married to Abby is arriving home after a long, cold, exhausting journey. She is the crackling fireplace, the shag rug, the couch I sink into, the blanket wrapped around me, and the jazz playing in the background that makes me shiver inside my blanket. So what I want to say is, what if I wasn't born this way at all? What if I married Abby not just because I'm gay, but because I'm smart? What if I did choose my sexuality and my marriage, and they are simply the truest, wisest, most beautiful, most faithful, most divine decisions I've ever made in my entire life? What if I have come to see same-gender love as a really solid choice? Just a brilliant idea, something I would highly recommend. And what if I demanded freedom not because I was born this way and can't help it, but because I can do whatever I choose to do with my love and my body from year to year, moment to moment, because I'm a grown woman who does not need any excuse to live however I want to live and love whomever I want to love? What if I don't need your permission slip because I'm already free?
That's beautiful. Well done. Yeah, so I'm gonna get right into it. What are your thoughts on all this and then her response to this?
So, in the spirit of full disclosure, I saw myself in so much of this book because I had a heteronormative marriage,
right,
before realizing I was gay, before coming out,
right,
before, all of that. So I saw myself in a lot of it. But I also have a lot of feelings about this part in particular.
That's what this is about. This is when we're supposed to get into it. So
Right. So I love the before, during, and after. I love that description, that depiction, the velvet skin, all of that. For me, that's beautiful. That so perfectly describes many things.
right.
But the what if I wasn't born this way? What if this was a choice? Don't need a but that I did pause in that when reading this book and sort of tilt my head. And I thought, kind of get where she's going with that. But I also have questions.
Right.
And I have some different opinions about that.
Right. So do I.
So what was your first initial reaction with that excerpt?
I think it was similar to yours. I think I sort of understand what she's saying, that at the end of the day, right, ideally we should be in a place where whatever somebody does in their life, whether it's born this way, right, like which would be, to me, would be a natural thing. Like if you're born this way, it's just naturally who you are, right? So I don't even understand. I guess I'm even confused on the point of like why this is even a point of dispute. I think from what her response to this, which we can get into, I think she's more focused on the religious aspect. And I think that that's what's throwing her, because it feels like she's very uncomfortable with saying, I was born this way. But to me, it's like, even if you're fluid, even if your sexuality is fluid, which I think all sexuality is truly fluid, we're all born that way, right? We're all born as we are. So I don't understand because for me, when you say I'm born this way, this is just who I am. Right. Whether you're bi, straight, whatever, it doesn't mean, it's not binary, gay or straight. There's all that mixed in that, and all people are born that way. So if she comes along and she's in midlife and all of a sudden she has this attraction, well, I think in some ways you were born that way in terms of you got to this point in life and now this is who you are. It's all a part of your experience, right? So you're just born into this life and this is who you are. Right. So I don't even understand why it's so it's something to me. I look at her and what I'm feeling is like there's something inside of her that where she's just uncomfortable with that. She's uncomfortable with having, and I don't know if it's she feels like it's that she's locked into something, that she just needs to have choice. Everything needs to be a choice for her. That's fine, right? So I got what she was saying, because at the end of the day, it should be the individual's choice as to who they decide to be with, regardless of the gay, straight, anything. Who you decide to be with, that should be your choice, and it should be nobody else's business. Right. So the argument that, well, I was born this way, it's sort of this, I guess, so I get how I want to make sure I'm choosing my words correctly. That I get what she's saying in terms of it's an argument that helps some people understand it, but also it sort of takes away the idea that this is just who I am. Like, I feel like when she removes that, I feel like you're removing a part of who I am, because I feel like who I am, when I think of myself in many ways at 7 years old and at 44, I feel like I'm still the same person, still the same consciousness. Right. So I feel like this is the life I was born into. So yeah, I was born this way and I don't understand. So I get what she's saying. I feel like, yeah, you can hold both of them. Right. But when we talk about the stuff that she says in response, there's some parts of it that I feel like very problematic in terms of, at some points it actually felt condescending the way she was saying things. Right. You know, like that the only possible way you can say I'm born this way is as a shield. Mm-hmm. Even if you feel that way, it's still, you're using it as a shield. And it's like, well, and we'll get into it. Like I said, I wrote some stuff down, but also when she talks about for herself that she doesn't even know if it's a choice for her. So it's like, well, why are you taking an argument that you don't even know yourself actually pertains to you? So who is this pertaining to? If right. Not, you just don't like this, so you're throwing something else out there. Like, I don't understand. So it just seems odd, and it seems like there's a lot more going on for her under the surface. Mm-hmm. So that's my small summary in the beginning. But I've been you know me, I've been holding it in all day. Same. It's been really hard. So I'm like, oh, don't let it out.
We were both trying to covertly plan this recording without giving each other spoilers so that we could talk about it.
Which I think I failed at one point inadvertently.
Just a little bit, but that's okay. Like,
you're like, yeah, no more. Right.
Like, just as someone who was in her shoes at one point or another, do her and I have the same sexuality? I don't know. I can't answer that because I'm not her.
Right.
I can look and recognize the choices that were made in life and how that affected everything. But it does not change the fact that I was born the way I was born. We have this joke, you know, the people that are closest to me, you're in on it now. You know, the other day you got in on it, there were signs.
Right.
There were so many signs throughout my life that I am so gay.
Right.
So gay. But I choose a heteronormative relationship. I thought at that point I might be bi. I knew I had an attraction to women. I hadn't explored it. Right. And the way I was conditioned was the things that I wanted in life meant I had to choose a man, a cis man.
Right.
I had to choose that to have a marriage, to have a child that was biologically mine, to have that life that I was set up to want, the expectations that I was given.
Right.
And the way I was raised. So yes, I did choose that. It didn't feel natural to me and I didn't understand why. And this is what I really, really felt when I read this book was my life on the outside, it looks good. We have this family, we have, you know, we fight, but you know, it's fine. Like, it's not crazy. It's not this, it's not that, but I'm not happy. Right. I know this is not it for me. I know that life was meant to be more.
Right.
More beautiful, more passionate, more everything. And it wasn't until we separated and I started dating women that I was like, oh, it's because I'm super gay. There's nothing he could have done to make that relationship more fulfilling for me. And on the flip side, there's nothing I could have done to make it more fulfilling for him.
Right. That's
So
yeah.
I did quote, choose that unknowingly.
Right.
But would I choose it again, knowing this about myself? No, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was born this way, because it is the most natural.
Right.
And I've seen both sides, and I know what is fulfilling for me.
Right. Right. And so that's where I feel like, you know, I mean, I don't know her sexuality. I can only speculate. And if I was speculating and was saying, okay, well, maybe she's not fully, you know, lesbian or queer, maybe she's, you know, bi, maybe she's really kind of in the middle. Like, I always look at myself as being like 70-30, like feels like the right kind of, I can't say, oh, no men ever. There have been men that have on some level fulfilled certain aspects, but never completely, right? And so it's just like 70-30 if I had to throw in percentages, you know? So she could be, for all we know, like 50-50, but, you know, in terms of, you know, sexual attraction, but yet, you know, there are other dynamics. There's emotional attraction. There's all these, you know, mental attraction that maybe this is where Abby does it for her, right? And so maybe she feels like for her, it is more of a choice. And she's like, oh, we should give those people a voice. Okay, but are you really choosing, or are you just, is it really a choice between this or that? Or is it just that on some level you could be fulfilled? You know what I mean? Like, you were fulfilled, but you're more fulfilled here, so you would choose this. Okay. For you, yes, there might be that aspect of choice, but you're also, now this is where we get into the stuff that we have to talk about. I should probably read it very soon. But that choice is granted to you because of all the work other people had to do, right? Because they were trying to be forced into choosing a straight lifestyle, forced into choosing that you could so bravely say, well, for me, I would absolutely 100% choose this every single time, right? Well, she has that luxury to sort of take the time to examine, where somebody who's gay or lesbian, say back even, you know, I'll go into my stories back 20 years ago. you really had to own that, you know what I mean? And you had to own that in your soul and really look and know that this is who I am, because there is no choice for me, because this is who I am, and to choose anything else would be inauthentic to me. And so that's the part where I think she's sort of missing that it's not just as a shield. It's not just, or that it's deeper than that for a lot of people, that this is who I am. And I think that's something that she's missing. And I think that there's something in this that she's not looking at, because she said okay, I'm going to read.
Yes, yeah.
Right. So we'll take this one part and we'll discuss this, because I have so much. All right. I was just totally on my soapbox, by the way. So this is a quote she was talking about, that she was talking to a prominent LGBTQ activist who was discussing with her based on what you just read and feedback she was getting. And it says, Glennon, when you claim freedom, I'm already free. It's like you're saying the world accepts queer folks now. Yeah, victory. And I can't, my own writing, like I'm fighting my own writing right now. But the truth is that the world only accepts like 10 gay people. Gay people with fame and hipness and money and whiteness, and you're one of them. There are a handful of gays who are accepted and celebrated, but the rest, much of the queer community, are still living in homes and communities in nations where religious bigotry is so deep and dangerous that the born this way narrative, the born this way idea is a shield, is true for some, and also a shield. And I like how she put that in there. It's true for some, like she has to keep putting that in there. And also a shield that protects them and allows their religious families to love them and not reject them, because their families are so homophobic that they will only accept them if their queerness is inborn and immutable and God-given. The born this way narrative is not only true for many, but it's a necessary shield against violence and hatred and ostracism and conversion therapy for much of the queer world. And then I'll just read the part down here that then she went on to say, it should not stand alone. Born this way should not be the only acceptable queer narrative. It should not stand at the exclusion of all other queer experiences. And then I just finish this part off. If the only acceptable queer narrative is we should have equality in human rights because we were born this way, then what about those of us for whom that does not ring true? What about those of us for whom our sexuality feels fluid and changing and has changed over time? And what about as more and more people feel free to share their truth? What if their truth is that their sexuality doesn't feel fixed and immutable but fluid? Are we going to silence them to maintain that one collective narrative? Okay, we'll start. I think that's it. I think that's the quotes that we're going to be talking about. Do you want to? Because I said so much.
Lennon, there are words for that. Fluidity. Because sexuality can absolutely be fluid. It's bi and pan. So the LGBT community is not binary.
Right.
Sexuality is not binary. So you're not gay or straight.
Right.
Growing up, that's what I thought there was. Gay or straight.
Right.
So, I mean, it was what, Tila Tequila that showed me that bi was a thing. And I remember that.
Really?
Where I'm like, I can like both?
Wait. This is all new information for me.
Yes.
For real? From MTV?
Okay, yeah. So I grew up in a very small town, New England, like New Hampshire, up in the Shire conservative area. So in this area, you were gay or you were straight, period. I hadn't heard of bi or pan or queer or trans or any of that. You were straight or you were gay. So when Tila Tequila came out and I was 18 years old, Krista, I was 18. And I'm watching this with all the dudes and Danny, and I rooted for Danny. Again, there were signs.
Oh my God, this is great. This is the first I'm hearing of this. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm like so focused.
Like, there's another choice. Like, that hadn't occurred to me. I mean, of course it makes sense, like looking back, but when you're a child and that's just how you grow up, and you grow up in a conservative area. And I mean, my parents, one's an independent, one's a Democrat, but still a very conservative upbringing within that. You know, one was raised Southern Baptist. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But so yeah, Tila Tequila, that show, that was my first experience that you
What was that show? What was the show?
Finding Love, I think. Something with Tila Tequila. So
but I remember that Danny, oh my God. It's so funny.
That would come and she had to choose, and you know, she broke Danny's heart and broke all of our hearts because Danny was amazing. Like signs.
So funny. But continue.
So that was my first experience with there was another choice. It wasn't binary.
Right.
It could be more fluid than that. And of course, I mean, I am way more binary than I realized. But the point being is there is bi, there is pan. And while that's not as accepted in the queer community as the binary choice of being gay or being a lesbian, it exists. That fluidity is queer.
Right.
So to say that I'm not born this way because I'm fluid, that's taking away from the bi and the pan experience of that is how they feel. They are fluid. They can choose any gender.
Right.
They can fall in love with any gender because it's just how they feel. That's who they're attracted to. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Right.
It can be anybody. So that is still queer.
Right.
And they are still born that way. So I cringed a little because I did not feel part of the community when I identified as bi because I was dating men at the time.
Right.
So I stayed out of it, and I have friends that are bi and pan. And for them to take away their identity to say you can't be born that way if you're fluid. That if you're
Right.
not all the way gay, then you're not born this way because you're fluid. They are born that way because
Right.
they're.
It's so funny you said that, because I literally put, like, right here, you can see my scribbles. I said full stop.
Full stop.
Right. I was like, when she said that, what about those who are sexuality feels fluid? I'm like, how does that suddenly change that? How does that change that you were born? You know what I mean? Like, because I mean, even though for me, like, as you know, I'm definitely, like, attracted to women more than men. Like I said, 70-30, but I still feel like overall, in terms of my sexual expression, you know this, that I feel like it is fluid, right?
Mhm.
Like, I feel like I'm just me. And that's been a lifetime thing where I've always been uncomfortable with labels. I mean, I've dated people who felt very uncomfortable because there was a time, like, I don't want to be known as a lesbian. I don't want to be known as queer. I just want to be me. And that's
Mhm.
it. Like, I don't want to label. I just want to be who I am and love who I love. And that's it. That's
Mhm.
always been a part of me. But at the same time, it's like, because that's just who I am, because I was just born that way. Right.
Right.
Like, and this still doesn't remove choice. And it's just like, she seems like if you're born this way, then you don't have a choice. Why does she feel like where she said that it should not, it shouldn't, when she said talking about born this way, that it should not stand at the exclusion of all of the queer experiences. It's like, but why does it? Right? Why is one, if I'm born this way, it excludes choice? If there's choice, it excludes born this way. Like, why is she kind of pitting the two against each other? That's the part that I still doesn't feel addressed
Mm.
for me, particularly when she doesn't even know. And she said in when she was discussing this, that she doesn't even know, like, she doesn't know where she falls yet. So why has this come to her that it's one or the other? And
Right.
yes, I agree, both should stand together. I mean, I'm not going to tell somebody, if you don't feel you weren't born that way, then you don't feel you were born that way. Okay. Like, I'm not going to argue that. But it just feels like, why is it one or the other? Why can't both sort of exist together
Right.
as as one whole sort of unit?
Right.
Choice and being born that way.
One, as she was sort of covering the both, and both should be able to exist within this queer community. Both identities, both experiences should be able to exist. She said something that for me was a full stop. Do you have that exact quote?
Which one? Wait, what was it?
What its inherent meaning is, born this way?
Wait, I'm not sure.
What it implies.
What implies? Wait. Like, sorry.
I didn't do all my homework. I didn't write the quote down.
I mean, can I just stop and say that I went over and read the quotes? I'm like, and she's like, yeah, that's good. We're
Yes.
to talk about.
You have it. I know you have it. Okay.
Well,
So it was right after this where she's discussing how both should be able to exist, and she spoke about born this way and how that feels and implied choice and things like that. But then she went on to say that I was born this way so I don't have a choice implies that I would choose differently.
oh, right. For her, it feels empowering, but
Yes, that.
oh, it feels, yeah. But I didn't actually put the quote down. I just said for her, it doesn't feel empowering, but has some implied homophobia, feels pity. I would choose heterosexuality if I could, but I was born this way, so have pity on me. That's one of the things she said. Yeah, that's what I got for that. I don't think I have.
Yeah. So we'll paraphrase.
Right.
But she was saying that the born this way narrative implies homophobia.
Right.
Because if I could choose differently, I would.
Right.
And we don't hear straight people saying if they could choose differently, they would. So why would we choose that?
Right.
I disagree with that so fully.
Mm-hmm.
So fully. Because I was born this way. If I could choose differently, I wouldn't choose differently. I've seen both.
Right.
I've had the duality in my life, and I can say fully that I would choose homosexuality every single time. But I will add that I do have a straight friend that we've had this conversation before.
Yeah.
My straight friend said, I love women. I think that women are beautiful. And I wish that I was sexually attracted to women because I would choose to be with a woman.
Right.
I would not choose to be with men. And we're talking cis men and cis women.
Yep.
I would not choose men if I had a choice. She
Right.
just does not feel sexually attracted to women.
Right.
So she was born that way. She was born straight.
Right.
So that is part of the conversation I think needs to come in also. That we don't hear it as much, but it is there and it does exist.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, like her whole thing about the implied homophobia. And again, I see her point of view. I see it. I'm like, okay, like, so for a gay person to say like, oh, I was just born this way, but if I could, I would choose to be straight because somehow straight is better. And you know what I mean? Like, and so somehow being gay or queer is somehow inferior. But it's like she said, it's like she feels pitying, if I could born this way, I would, I would, so have pity on me. Like that somehow we're just saying, again, it's her whole argument. I get my words here, it feels, and I told you quickly in the beginning when we were going over the stuff that it feels condescending to me. That it's like, that somehow I'm saying, oh, I was born this way, so people would think I don't have a choice, and so to feel pity because this is just who I am. And that feels like she's stripping the empowerment from me. I feel it more from her than I do, say, the straight community who's like, oh, you were born that way. Because somehow it's me, it feels like, okay, you understand me. Well, with her, it's like, you're not understanding me. Like, and then when she went back to, and she said it several times in the beginning, where she said about, I have my notes here, about the that it's true for some. She kept saying it's true for some about being born that way. And it's like, it's actually true for many, not some, many. And she kept throwing that in. It's almost like she is still trying to understand. I'm still trying to understand. Right. And it's just, I don't know. It felt highly condescending. Like, it felt highly condescending to say, well, that's what it's about. Whereas when she's sitting there saying, okay, it's a choice, she's almost arguing. And I don't think she realizes that she's doing this. I mean, she kind of hinted to it when she had the activists speaking to her. But going back to the argument that religious people say, well, it's a choice, so choose to be straight. Right? Just choose to be straight. Just then, if it's a choice, then choose this, right? Because this is all these other things, which, again, totally homophobic. But then, and this is another part that I take issue with, is when she says, like, when she talks about other marginalized communities, when she talks about the Black and brown, and then she talks about Muslim community, that you don't hear them saying, well, I was born this way, I was born Black, but if I could, I would choose to be white. No one's asking a Black person to be white. Like, yes, there's the push to, oh, if I'm more white, I mean, we could go back in history and say, if I'm more white, then I get more acceptance. But still, no one's saying, well, why are you Black? Why can't you be white? That's what I mean by that, right? Like, just be white. Just be white. Like, you can change that, change your skin color, change that. And even Muslim people, Islamophobia is not saying you should be Christian. It's just looking at the religion, and I mean, I don't want to go into the whole thing, but my point is that people are saying, why can't you just be Christian? Just be Christian, be Christian, just be Christian. In the LGBT community, and that goes for gay, lesbian, it's just all about be straight, because straight is acceptable. If you're anything else, then you have some type of mental illness. No one's saying if you're Muslim, you have a mental illness. No one's saying if you're Black, you have a mental illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this idea that I'm born this way is actually more about saying this is who I am, and there is nothing wrong with me. This is just who I am. This is just it. Just accept me. And she's missing that. And when she starts off her whole thing saying that she's done all this work, right? And this is, it rubbed me the wrong way. She says that she's done all this work, that she's taken a week to listen to people, and now she's come to a place where she understands this. I get this, and now I'm asking all of you to take the time to understand this other point of view. She really hasn't taken the time, because she hasn't taken the time for somebody like me, who's now 44 years old, who can go back to her teen years, who can go back to her early 20s, who can pinpoint many times in history where I have had experiences with homophobic people and had to face that, right? She did come into it. It's like coming into a game in the fourth quarter and saying, listen, everybody, I figured out this is how you're going to win. Mm-hmm. You haven't been playing the game, right? I accept you into the community, but as she said about the feminist community, she's still stepping in and saying, well, I took the time to listen to these people. Now I'm going to tell you what I think, without understanding the deep lying reasons people have come to a place where knowing that this is who they are, not just using it as a shield and believing it, but knowing this is who I am. This is how I was born. I couldn't have been any other way. Right? And there's nothing wrong if she just, decided like, well, I wasn't born this way, but I've changed and this is who I am now. Well, great. This is who you are now. But you don't need to go and take up your flag against the people who, and try to start another. I don't know. I see that it does more harm than good. It does more harm than good at the end of the day. Because she's not saying it's been a choice for me, and I'm letting you know that it is a choice, and because I know it's a choice, I'm arguing for this against this. She's saying I don't even know where I fall, but I'm making this argument. Why? It's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's coming into the game in the fourth quarter, and I know that obviously, like, you're coming into the game in the fourth quarter. Right?
Because I'm not telling anyone else their experience or what should be an experience and what should be accepted and should not be accepted. I'm coming in the fourth quarter ready to go, coach. I've been sitting on the bench for 3 quarters and I'm ready. Oh my God, I'm ready. Because for me, there was no shame around it.
Right.
When people ask me, oh, were you nervous to come out? I mean, there were a couple family members, yes, I was nervous to tell them, but when it came to telling friends and to going public and to just, recently the hair went, like we've watched this evolution happen the past few months.
Hair, right. It's so weird. Can I just pause on that? It's so weird because I see the picture with you with the straight hair and I see you now and I'm like, oh my God, doesn't even look like you because it wasn't you yet.
It wasn't me yet because the long hair was a social expectation.
Right.
That I leaned into heavily. I'm pulling up a picture. That's why I'm looking down so that we can, because they might not know
right
the difference here. So I'm just pulling a random one. It looks a little weird.
Right. I'm just gonna put it out there right now. Like, you're so much hotter like this. Like, you're hotter. Not so much hotter. You're hotter. What?
This is more me. I have let go of the social expectations. I have shed them. I've really stepped into who I am. I've never felt more myself. So when she speaks about saying, oh, born this way, that there's some shame or some just like, oh, feel bad for me. I never felt that.
Right.
I stepped
That's what I'm saying.
100% going, this is who I am. This is how I was born. This answers every single question that I've had about why my life has not made sense. And I don't want anyone to feel bad for me. I don't feel bad for me. Right. I want to celebrate it.
Right.
So I have pride with it. I do. And I'm fully out. I mean, you bought me rainbow Converse and I love them.
They are awesome. I
They're
still
my
like,
daily
yeah,
shoe.
they were great. They're awesome.
But like, there's no, oh, feel sorry for me, feel pity for me. There is no pity here. There is only pride.
Right. Right.
And I was born this way.
Right.
And that's not shameful. There's
Right.
nothing wrong.
So that's what I'm saying. So when she says it's a shield, and she acts like she kept saying that it's a shield, it's a shield. It's like, okay, well maybe it is a shield. It's a shield of truth.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like implying like her using the word shield implies that there's some type of deception, like that here's this, don't look behind it, right? That's not it. It's almost like, me just opening it up and saying, this is me, right? Like I would argue that way. It's not a shield, but it's like me opening up and saying, this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Being completely vulnerable and saying, I'd rather live my life in my truth than to deny that truth.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's because you've been bombarded. Like it would have been easier. Like if I was straight, that would have been so much easier. My life would have been so much easier if I could have been that. There's no pity or shame or homophobia. Like it's literally saying, this is who I am. And
Right.
I'm taking all of this abuse. I'm taking all of this on that she hasn't, like, she acknowledges this. She has not had to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
I had to deal with that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it almost feels like an insult. And maybe a lot of the people that are rallying behind what she's saying haven't lived that life.
Mm-hmm.
They're riding, which is great in the sense that I'm glad you haven't had to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But now don't say, well, I don't even, it's a choice because I haven't had to look and examine that on such a deep level of, well, can I be straight? No, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a choice if that is not even an option. If
Right.
it's an option, if in the LGBTQ community, I mean, trans people can be straight, you know what I mean? But the B, we're looking at strictly sexuality in that,
Mm-hmm.
that bisexual, there is choice in there, and that's okay. But you were still born. I mean, you could still be born that way in that choice of having that choice and being born that way. So again, I don't understand where her issue lies, except to say that, I mean, one of the things I wrote down, and I don't know if it's true, but it's something that I'm trying to understand, like why she feels so strongly about it, because it just, there's that whole saying about people who are, where did I write it down? Oh, on this one, people who are really against, homosexuality, and really, that thou protest too much, that type of attitude of like, well, why is this such a passionate issue for you?
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder if she has some, they talk about when we're referring to racism and being anti-racist, and that we have to unlearn things. We have to unlearn our own biases and stuff. And so I also wonder if, for me, if there's a little, I don't want to say, and I put unresolved homophobia. I don't want to say homophobia, but, just her own, I guess, straight biases, in the sense of that she doesn't like the idea of being boxed into, and I guess Untamed, and the whole idea of wanting to be wild and free, that she doesn't like the idea of saying, I was born this way, therefore somehow that implies I don't have a choice, and I need choice in my life. I need to know that I specifically chose this. And if that is not the underlying reason for her sort of being so passionate about it.
Right.
Because you know me, I like to understand things of like, well, where is that really coming from inside her? And when she ends with this whole, like, people, deeply examining what she is saying, I hope that she deeply examines why she's saying it.
Right.
But
when there is choice, even if you know that you're gay or you're queer, there is the choice to live your truth.
Right.
And there is the choice to stay closeted.
Right.
your partner does not define your sexuality. Your sexuality just is.
Right.
It is. And yes.
No, go ahead.
Because I could choose to say, okay, we separated. I know that I'm gay now, but I have some discomfort around that, so I'm going to just date another man.
Right.
I've done it before. I could choose to do that again, but I would not have a fulfilled life, or as she says, my truest, most beautiful life.
Right.
I would not have that.
Right. Which also, being somebody who, let's see here, in my teen years, I dated men, and then in my 20s is, 20 years old. Might have been, no, I think it was 20 when I met my first girlfriend. Met her, and then my 20s, it was like a whole lot of women, a few men, and then my 30s, and now it's just exclusively women. Went that direction. Although there were times in my 30s when I went on dating sites, I'm like, well, maybe I'll just put in men too and see. You know what I mean? And it was like, and I did end up finding one of my closest friends, my friend Justin, on a dating site. Again, it was like, no, but you're awesome, and I think it was also is that I actually, as friends, I enjoy men so much more as friends in many ways, because it's just easier friendships, but where was I going with this? But in that, even though I dated a lot of women, I mean, all the stuff she mentioned about dating, with women, and her, with Abby, and all the wonderful things in that, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You might know from the book. How many women has she dated?
From what I understand from the book, she fell in love with Abby before she left her marriage.
Okay.
So that was the one transition, was the marriage to the Abby. If there's anything, I apologize, but from my understanding of the readings, that's just this and then this.
Right. If that makes sense to her, like, it's beautiful, and I made this choice because it's so much better with a woman. I would argue, from my experience, that no, like, you still have to find that right person. And she struck gold if she went from her marriage to Abby, and I'm happy for them. I'm truly happy for them. But she struck fucking gold, because as you know, what?
The exception, not the rule. Yes.
Right. I went through a lot of shitty, crazy, dysfunctional, heartbreaking relationships before I met you. Now I understand, because when you read that, like, it related to me when it comes to you. Like, truly, I know that I'm in something healthy and wonderful. And as people on my Instagram have stated, like, wow, you look so happy. I am so happy. I feel fulfilled. My heart is full. You know this. You feel the same way. We've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
That is in any type, whether you're straight, gay, whatever, that exists on all levels. It's not just because, she's a woman and she's a woman and that somehow magic happens. Not how it works. There's personality dynamics. There's have you done your work from all the shitty stuff that's happened from you from childhood? There's so many aspects to making a great, wonderful, caring, healthy relationship that is far from just being woman and woman, right? Or as she says, same gendered relationship. Just because you share a gender in common doesn't mean suddenly magic happens.
Sure, right? I mean, we giggle because I've only been out, I mean, it's close to a year now. But yeah, I mean,
you dated a few other people before me, so like.
I did. I mean, I had an unhealthy relationship before my son's father, too.
Right.
So in comparison, those two men seemed very different, and it felt like a very beautiful life because it wasn't abusive.
Right.
We're great friends. Like, I'm not shitting on him.
He's a great guy. I mean, I've met him. He's a great guy.
Exactly. It's beautiful that, like, the two of you get along, and that's like a dream come true. Brought me to tears. But we were two really best friends that had a child together, is what it boils down to. There were great times, there is love between it, but it's a friendship love. But I think there was that confusion because I had been through abuse.
Right.
It seemed magic.
Right.
And her, her husband was not described in that way. That's not what I'm saying. But when you compare, and then to figure out that I'm gay, there was a lot of emotions mixed up in the first woman that I dated.
Right.
And then after that, going on dates and different things, there's a wide range of women that I did not choose. So there is still choice. I still chose as my partner. And I still chose this healthy, beautiful relationship. I did not choose my sexuality. But I can choose who I share that with.
Right. I was, but prior to this, I just quickly looked because the whole science of sexuality and, is it something, again, looking at, are you born this way or is it a choice? And we know that it's not a mental illness. We can, that's been removed a long time ago, but you still have the debate on that. And so I was looking, and one thing we know for sure is that homosexuality is something that is natural and found in nature across the board.
Right.
And you see it, and when it appears within species, it's not like the other animals within that species are like, there's something wrong here, kill it, right? It's just natural and it's accepted, my favorite animal in the whole wide world is bonobos, and that homosexuality, exists, and also, sort of polyamorous types of relationships exist, and it's all good because sexuality is not just about procreation, but it's also about pleasure, and also not only pleasure, but it's also about feeling good and about play, and it falls into all these other areas. So with that, what I'm saying with that is that in nature, we know it exists and that it is natural. Now they did this, the most recent study was in 2019 that looked at genes in terms of, is it in your genes? Are you born, is there a quote unquote gay gene? They found that no, they can't see anything that would say with 100% that there is a gay gene and that it's, exclusively that's what it is. But they say that genes do play a part in it, but only a small part. But the problem with that is when people argue in the studies, like they only looked at in terms of sexual genes. They didn't look at genes that relate to attraction, because attraction and sexuality are actually two different things. Which makes sense to me, because when I'm like, and we've talked about this, when I've been in relationships with men, sexually, there's been this transactional type of relationship, right? Like, I'm turned on, let's do this. I feel guilty because also I want you to, have pleasure too. So let's do this. Okay, we've done this. Great. But I was missing the emotional and the sort of mental. I was missing the other parts of attraction. It wasn't a full on, like, I'm immersed in this type of attraction. With women, I have that. And I believe that relates to what I'm attracted to. When you look at what I'm attracted to, I'm far more attracted to sort of androgynous or feminine type of features than masculine features. Masculine features don't really do it to me. That's not sexual attraction. That's just attraction. Right. So that's why I get, again, for me, the 70-30, like there's still something missing. And I just bring this up because I was looking at, well, are we born this way? Right. And I think what we're attracted to, again, is formed. If you're not quote unquote born, it's formed at a young age. It's formed as you move along. And I still think that plays into the born this way because it's just who I am. Right. I can't change that, And then the argument of like, well, why would you change that? Right. But most people who are gay would argue that's who I am, and And when you say that's who I am, you naturally go back to, well, that's just, I was born this way. Right. I go back to the Lady Gaga song.
It's been stuck in my head all day on repeat.
I know, it's been in my head all day too. Like I just keep like walking around and I hear, I was born this way, baby. It's like, you know, like it's who I am.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, anything with how we're shaped is nature and nurture.
Right.
Know?
Right. It's true.
But
bipolar, right? I mean, my father's bipolar. We know people who are bipolar, and again, that's something like you have a predisposition. People wouldn't argue, well, okay, you're bipolar. Well, you know, like if again, like you can't look and say, can we find a gene that says you are absolutely 100% bipolar?
Right.
I mean, I haven't checked it. I don't think there is. But before I say that and be wrong, but I know that it's something that they know that you can have a predisposition, but you know, which is nature, and then your nurture aspect of it, of like how you were raised, is that going to trigger that? So it's the same type of concept. Did I interrupt you again? If I did, I apologize.
No. Oh my goodness. No, it's true.
Hard because we're in a relationship, so now I'm like, oh, I don't want to interrupt you. I don't want to being self-conscious.
You're so sweet. You're so sweet.
Go ahead. You were gonna say something.
Well, with the nature and nurture, like, but that can go either way too, because I'll look at it and say my nurture was heteronormative.
Right.
That's how I was raised.
That's true.
You want to find a husband so that you can have a marriage and a home and kids and a house. You know, I recently wrote a blog post about that. These were the things that I was told that I wanted, so that's what I went after.
Right. I remember that. Yep.
And I did the whole thing, and it wasn't. Parenting is fulfilling. I will throw that in there. I won't regret or change anything because I have my son and he's incredible.
He's incredible. I have to.
He's so good.
He is. See, like I get all. This is what you do to me. Like I'm putting it all out there. Like this is what you do to me. You make me smile a lot. So. Aww. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
I have a new goal of like maybe making someone throw up in their mouth a little bit. But so that my nurture should say heteronormative. So obviously there's something underlying that fought against that.
Right.
And my sibling as well. My sibling is non-binary trans.
Right.
So we were raised in this household of heteronormalcy.
Right.
I'm gay and they're trans and pan. So
well, most people who are gay are raised in, because that is the norm, like heteronormative, like that is the norm.
So while a lot of things are nature and nurture, it's also my nurture would say no.
Right.
To that. But would I have come out sooner? Had I known sooner? Had I been raised in that? Probably. You know, but again, I won't regret it because I have my son and my experiences, everything that has shaped me into who I am now. I appreciate who I am now more.
Right.
Because I recognize the depression and everything that happened with being in a heteronormative relationship and looking at it and saying nothing's wrong. I'm not being abused. I'm not being cheated on, but I'm not happy.
Right.
Am I selfish? What is missing? I don't understand. So when I understood, it was kind of, woo!
Right.
Here I am, and I get it. Right. But
no, it's true. And like for me, like I had to fight against, you know, sort of when I came out, like my brother and sister-in-law were going to an evangelical church. You know, I hesitate, you know what, but I'm going to do it. I'm just going to say it's Pinewood Lutheran Church in Burlington, Massachusetts, because of the fact that it's been so damaging and that they have pamphlets like right in their fellowship hall about how homosexuality is a sin and it's awful, and having to see that. And I remember as a teenager in my senior year of high school, and then that's when my brother got married to my sister-in-law, and that was the church again. I was afraid of my own sexuality, even though I sort of knew that I was, you know what I mean? It's like I knew, but I didn't want to face it. And I was dating at the time my boyfriend, Jeff. And I was just like, it's wrong. It's against nature and all. Like, I fought against it before I knew that I was gay. I mean, and you know me now, that's bizarre, right? It's like me just being so, you know, sort of anti-gay. And then I, like, while they were going to church, I went to this church, and then it's just sort of, I came to the fact that I was actually like in love with my good friend Connie. Like, again, I was dating Jeff, and I told you this story. Like, I would see, like, we would talk about the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, and she's never seen the Little Dipper. And I was like out on a date with Jeff, and I look up and like, there's the Little Dipper. I'm like, let's go see Connie so I can show her the Little Dipper. I mean, just that, right? Like,
There were times.
right. I'm like, I want to show her. In my mind, when I think back on that, it was such a romantic gesture that would be in the yard, and I would reach up and show her, and she'd be so like in awe of. I didn't go to my prom because I went with her to her aunt's house in New Jersey, and we went to Six Flags, and I was so like in love. And I mean, it was just, and I remember I was in the shower when I realized I was actually gay. I was in the shower and I'm washing my hair, and that's when, as you know, you have a not a Sharpie, right? It's like a
dry erase marker, yeah.
Dry erase marker that for you in your shower. So if you have thoughts, that's so ingenious, because I get out of the shower, I'm wet, I'm trying to write down, or now with my phone, like, or like you said, voice recording. So ingenious. But I was in the shower, so that's when all the deep thoughts happen, and I'm like, what if I'm gay? And then it was like immediately, like out loud, I said, I'm gay. Like, it was like boom boom, you know, like all these years of like having like my friend Jessica like ride on the back of my scooter, and I was like, oh my god, she's gonna hold me, and I'm like, oh, you know what I mean, like all just so excited about it. Or Jill on my skateboard, like, we're gonna go ride down the hill doubles. Like, just so it was always there. My whole point is that you know, I finally come out, and then I have to fight against now this religious aspect of my brother and my sister-in-law. And at the time, my mom started going to the church, and it was hard. And it was like this idea that love is never wrong. And I listened to the song by Melissa Etheridge, Silent Legacy. If you haven't listened to it, because it's amazing, like on repeat. It's, I mean, my first girlfriend was from North Carolina, Bobby, and she was from Asheville, and like our first experience was in a hotel room in Georgia, like Massachusetts Boston girl in Georgia having her first gay experience. I mean, it's just in context, but it was just so. And then in the song, she talks about like, you know, being in a, you know, again, motel room match. You just have to listen to it. But it was so like, I was just an empowering song, but like love, like the idea that love is never wrong. And that's what I held to. I'm like, I knew for me that it was about love. It was about something deeper. It wasn't just sex, you know? Mm-hmm. So again, when they're doing these studies and they're just looking at sex genes, it's like, it's not sex, it's attraction. Like it's something deeper than sex. Like, so, but anyways, it's just this, I don't know. It's just, it's so much deeper, and it's so, I don't know where I was going with that. Actually, I totally lost my thought. But it was, I think my point is when it comes to nature and nurture, like for me, again, it boils down to, it was really never a choice. It was just, I mean, I guess there was a choice. The choice, you know what? Do I stay true to who I am, or do I live a lie? Like, that's the choice. And when you talked about Jesse, and for him, that it was not something that he, that you couldn't give him what he needed. And that's always something that I held to too, is that it's not fair for me to be in a relationship with somebody who's not, I know I can't give him all he needs, and he deserves that. He deserves somebody who can fulfill him in all the ways he needs to be fulfilled. I can't do that. Right. I'd much rather be in a relationship with you and know that I can fulfill all your needs.
You. Absolutely. And it's true. And I know that, like, speaking to coming in the fourth quarter, you know, while I have seen biases, I told you about previously before I met you, there was a woman that gave me and the person I was with at the time an odd look.
Right.
He was glaring and things like that just because we were together at a grocery store. And, you know, I'm so sarcastic with it because it's 2020. And again, I'm in the fourth quarter, so I didn't have the previous experience. I blew her a kiss and freaked her out, and it made my day. Like, but for me, I do know that I'm lucky that I came out to love, an abundance of love from my friends, from my family. I didn't experience that. And with my ex, I was nervous to tell him because I didn't want him to feel like it discounted our joyous moments. Because we did have happiness. It just wasn't a fulfilling love. It's a friendship love. It's different.
Right.
And so I was very nervous trying to, like, tell him and explain it and kind of these things. And he just started laughing and goes, "I'm not surprised." And he gave me a high five. Like, that was, so I do recognize that I am extremely lucky in that. There are things that I'm going to have to fight against that I'm seeing more, that there are a couple people in my life that, oh, I'm so happy for you, but I am starting to see sort of it being a mask. You and I can talk about that more another time. But overall, you know, 90% of the people in my life have been nothing but supportive.
Right. Right.
And for me, that's beautiful.
Right.
And it's inspiring.
Well,
and it's empowering.
Well, you know, I mean, you still know, like, my situation with my sister-in-law and my brother and all that pain that is involved. You know, I've gotten to a point where, I mean, I can't say I've made peace with it, but I value myself more than to allow, you know, her opinions to dictate, you know what I mean, my self-worth. Like, that was a big one that I had to work on. I mean, because I met her back when I was, you know, I want to say like 15. I mean, because my brother he went to prom with her, so I was like 8. So I was like 14 years old when I first met her, you know, and all I wanted was, like, somebody who was like, you know, like, oh my God, I'm going to have a sister-in-law. And this preconceived notion of what it meant. And it was never like that. And I assumed there was something wrong with me, you know? And so to overcome all of that and to get to a place where it's, my self-worth isn't reliant on other people. And again, that was all the work that I had to do to get to that place. But it's still, yeah, I have all those memories. I mean, I told you about the time that my car got towed, and where I was parked, they put, you know, whatever it was, Gay Street. I wasn't on Gay Street. There's a gay club right there. They knew, you know what I mean, that I was at that club, and that's why, so they towed my car strictly for those reasons. And I ended up having to, luckily I had a friend who had a lawyer friend who was able to get my car out and still had to pay, but it was this whole, I mean, it's just a lot. I mean, going to gay pride in the first few years and having to deal with, you know, people coming right up to you and saying a lot of nasty shit, and have to be that person to stand up and have conversations with these people. I've always been that person, but I understood when Glennon spoke of with Abby that she stayed silent when they went to the bank, and the banker, and they had the paperwork and it said husband and wife, and right away you would have been her being like, what is this? Where yes. I would have been like, oh yeah, no, that's about right. Right? Like, it's not that I don't care, but it's like, I'm kind of used to that. Where I live, you know, with the gay flag, I mean, there's a black truck that it hasn't drive by in now over a year, but the first time it drove by, like, screaming dyke out the window, and last summer screaming CUNT out the window at me, and like, and giving the like scary stuff that revolves around being gay, right? Like, these are the things I've experienced, like, you know, when Trump won the election, and going to, like, favorite restaurant. Suddenly people who are anti-gay felt like now they can speak their voice out loud, and having to sit there and have breakfast and listen to these people talk about Bible stuff and about gay, and looking over at me and having to eat my meal and being like, okay. Although with that, like, I got up and part of me just wanted to ignore them, but I'm like, no, I'm not going back in a closet. And so when I did get up, I purposely walked around the table this way and looked right at them until they looked away. Because I'm like, I'm not giving you the last, like, you're not shutting me down. You're not, but it's tiring.
Right.
And again, those are things that, like, with you and recognizing coming in the fourth quarter that you didn't have to experience, you know? So, and I think that it would do Glennon some, I hope, I mean, she's a wonderful, amazing human being. But if I were to give some advice, I would say reflect on when you're coming into this, because I know she understands it on one level, but you're sort of, you haven't walked the steps of people. I mean, myself, for example, like, I've been in this game since I was 19 years old, right? So over 20 plus years. I've seen how it's changed. I've seen how it's evolved. You and I spoke about last night when we were watching the documentary Disclosure, right? Talk about Max from the L Word, and we had two very different views on it. Your view was, I'll let you share your view.
Just coming from trans, still the community hasn't fully accepted trans. And then, of course, outside the community, that's a whole other discussion.
Right.
But it's more so accepted now than I think it was during the L Word. And then before that, even more so, as the documentary was talking about, you know, back to the beginnings of Hollywood and beyond. But I thought that Max was treated horribly on that show, because I watched it recently. You know, I came out and then watched the L Word because that was sort of my welcome packet. Like, oh, you're a lesbian now, you must watch the L Word. It was part of it. Like, that's just how it went. Like, I had to earn my rainbow stripes. So in watching the L Word, I was at first so excited to see a trans person on the show, because I have my sibling and I've seen all the struggles that my sibling has gone through and is still going through. But then to watch people within the community sort of fight against who he was and try and say, like, oh, you know, you are giving up your femininity and all these things. So for me, it was, I hated it. I hated how they all treated Max. And then you had your perspective.
Right, which was I watched that when it happened in real time. And so I was saying to you, I'm like, but back then it was very true to how trans people, right, especially somebody who's transitioning, like transmasculine, right, transmasculine, to how they were being treated, right? And like, especially like in the documentary, they, oh my gosh, I'm totally drawing a blank. What's her name? Oh my gosh, what's her name? I'm like totally drawing a blank. I'm having literally a fibro moment in this moment. Some so-and-so sister. Kit.
Yes.
Kit, yes, thank you. Phew. Kit, when Kit says to Max, like, why would you want to get rid of like being a woman? Like, a woman is amazing and that's a gift, and why would you want to give this gift away? Like, that's so true. And so Kit was sort of playing off of the lesbian type of how lesbians sort of reacted to that, which is that, you know what I mean? Like, you're in, and that's how back in the day when it was just I remember being in college at UMass Lowell, being in the LGB group, which feels so weird now because I want to say the T. And I remember being in a meeting where we were discussing the T and how most everybody in that group was like, no to the T, because the argument back then, and I'm saying back then, so this is going back again, like over 20 years ago, was that trans is not a sexual identity. It's a gender identity. It's something completely different. We're fighting for our sexual rights. You coming in, you're taking away from our identity, and you're making it harder for us to get the rights we want. That was the argument. I remember sitting in a room listening to that argument. And so then you go and you still move on. And so the trans community, I mean, they still fight. I mean, we just watched that, like with Stonewall, right? They didn't want to give the Black trans people the credit in terms of Stonewall. It was like, no. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't do that. Like, it like literally made it a white guy in the movie, the latest that movie, to throw that's not what happened, right? Still to this day, it's still not given that right. So when you come to the L word and Max and all that Max went through, and like the testosterone and the over aggression, those were all things that were believed. So Max, so to me, it's like it rings true to what was going on during that time. That's all Max experienced. Max was treated shitty because trans masculine people were treated shitty back then. Right? It was hard. If you were a drag king, oh, that's cool because you're still a lesbian. You're a lesbian playing a gender role. Being trans, that's a whole nother thing. I remember, even back then, like, it was a big thing. Like I used to go to a club in Haverhill, Massachusetts called Friends Landing. And at Friends Landing, I remember, and I own it. I was in on this. I own it. We had a problem with trans women going into our bathroom. Who are you? Because we're standing in these long lines. The men's room, no long line. What are you doing? Go using our bathroom, right? You don't. Like, you're not a woman. We still had a long way to go. We and I own that. I was a part of that. Is that who I am now? No, absolutely not. I had to grow, but that's where we were. And so when it comes to Max, like, yeah, that rings true to pretty much what Max went through.
Right.
And it was shitty. And Max, even though it was a fictional character, it still was representational of real people. And those people shouldn't have gone through what they went through. And that's the difference. And I feel for like Glennon, she's approaching it from where you were approaching Max. She's approaching it from right now. And not really doing the deep work of sitting on what it was like back like the people who are around her, even her age now, that came out when and had to do the work. Right? Like, I get it. I get saying, oh, well, like, it's a choice. Why can't it just be a choice? Well, do you know we had to fight through people on the right saying it's a choice? We had to fight through that. We've already had that discussion. Why are you bringing it back there?
Right.
When you yourself can't even say if it's a choice.
Right.
Don't go back there. And so that is a privileged perspective.
Absolutely.
A very privileged perspective.
And as someone else who has come in the fourth quarter, as you said, I would not ever dare to try and change the narrative.
Right.
That's not my job. My job is to learn the history, is to respect and honor those that came before me that fought for every right that I have now. To be able to walk down the street and walk Freddie and hold your hand.
Right, it's true.
In imminent danger. In New England, there are still places in US and in the world where that would be a danger. Right. And for gay men, it's a higher risk. And for trans men and women, that's still a higher risk. But I will always honor those who have fought for that, for me to feel comfortable enough coming in the fourth quarter, coming out so loud and bold and proud and chopping off all my hair and not giving any F's about it, I'm lucky and
Right.
privileged and grateful. But
Right.
I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, just choose it. What a great choice I made to not be here. It wasn't a choice. I was born this way. But even if I had felt somewhere different about it, I'm not going to change the narrative of everyone else that came before me to give me the privilege that I have now.
Right, 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 right. To sort of further that privilege of saying, well, I don't feel comfortable with that, so therefore I'm going to invoke a conversation that
Right.
could in the end be harmful to
Right.
many in the community. It's just not right. I mean,
It's not.
it's not, and like I said, I still hold true. My gut feeling is that there's something deeper going on for her that she's not looking at, for that to be something where she's still gonna, because I had hopes that that video was going to be like, I had listened and here's where I'm at. But it was literally like, I have listened, I get that, but I'm still holding this. I'm going to double down on this. And now, because I said I've done the work, I'm going to ask you to now do the work and listen to me.
Right.
And that's what I feel like that whole conversation, that's where it went. And that feels highly problematic to me of like, no. And that sort of, as much as I don't want it to, changes my view of you a little bit because I feel like there's something underlying that you're not looking at that makes you feel so compelled to do that, you know? So, anyways. So I think that's it. I think we've run the course.
Absolutely.
Right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop this
Mm-hmm.
and pretend everything's like we're done, but then secretly I'm gonna talk to you more because I miss you.
Oh, we're so cute.
What's that?
So we're so cute.
I know, I know. Is that the vomit in the mouth thing?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm going to pause this. Thank you for chatting with me.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
In 4 seconds, yes.